Hello and welcome to Module 2 for Market Manager Training. I'm Eileen Katovich, Farmers Market Specialist with Alberta Agriculture and Irrigation, and I am here to lead you through Module 2. So as I stated in Module 1, in the first recording of this webinar, the purpose of these is to be a supplement to the written materials that are available to you online, understanding that some people would prefer to do it this way rather than simply reading the materials to get more out of it, or it adds to the reading that they do. I've broken the training into 3 modules, so 3 different webinars. The first deals with the Alberta Approved Farmers Market Program and the guidelines. This module talks about the roles of the different stakeholders who are involved with our farmers markets, and the last module is on the basic regulatory requirements. As I stated before with Module 1, after you've completed all of the materials, whether you've read it or watched all of the webinars, you do need to complete a short 25-question multiple choice test and receive a mark of 80% in order to receive your certificate and show that the course has been completed. Please use the materials or these webinars. If you have any questions as you're going through the test, they're meant to be a resource for you, and you're not expected to know everything right off the bat. So please use what is available to you and use these materials as a resource as you go along. So I am going to share my screen again, and we will move into the presentation. So as I said, this is Module 2 of talking about the different roles of the stakeholders who are involved with the program, and take it forward from there. So if you are going through the written materials, this is pages 19 to 30 in the manual. You can follow along, make notes if that's what you choose to do. So the market manager, the first person in this complex web of stakeholders. You are an employee of the market, and that is really something that needs to be understood first and foremost, is that you are hired either by the sponsoring body or you are hired by the board of directors to be the manager of the market, and therefore you are treated like an employee. And this applies whether you are a paid employee or whether you are a volunteer. It really doesn't matter. You are still treated the same way in that respect. You are the enforcer of the market rules and of the legislation and everything that goes with that, including everything that goes with the food permit. You are there to provide the board of directors and the advisory committee, the sponsor, with input on policy, because you are on the floor all the time with the vendors, and you do understand everything that is going on and what sorts of policies will work and what policies won't work. Lots of our market managers are still volunteers, others are paid, and how you are paid will vary depending on the market. Some are paid hourly, some are paid a per week stipend, so during the hours of the market. Some are paid an annual salary. It's all over the map. Some are vendors, and some do receive like a free table rent as their payment. Others receive a stipend at the end of the year as a sort of a bonus if there's money left over. So lots of different ways to compensate our market managers. Whether, as I said, that there are a lot of market managers who are still vendors. We do not encourage that. We actually discourage that because it is a conflict of interest. It's very difficult for you to be an enforcer of the market rules and to do what is expected of you with respect to the food regulation, for example, where you need to be on top of all of the food vendors and making sure that they're following the rules and doing everything that they need to. Like, you do truly need to inspect every single market. So doing that from your own table can be challenging to do at best. And they're often, I will hear complaints about favoritism, where the manager is, getting the best table because they're the manager, or other complaints that come in. So it can be very challenging to be a vendor as well as the market manager. And as the market manager, you are accountable to many different people. This little picture will show you exactly everybody who's in that list. So you're accountable to Alberta Agriculture and Irrigation. You need to adhere to the guidelines. You need to complete the annual paperwork. There are expectations that we place upon that market manager. The regulatory agencies, so groups such as Alberta Health Services, Canadian Food Inspection Agency, Alberta Agriculture and Irrigation has legislation that you are expected to make sure is being followed by both you on yourselves as well as the vendors who are on the floor. So that is a big piece of what you do. You're responsible to or accountable to the board of directors, or the advisory committee, depending how you're set up. Board of directors, if you have a not-for-profit society, advisory committee, if you are in a sponsored market. And you're also accountable to the vendors. You're that first point of contact with the vendors, and they have expectations of how you will behave and the things that you will do on their behalf in the market. So that is also very important. But at the same time, there are lots of people out there who are there to support you and to help you do your job and make your life easier, and not, to remove barriers for you. One of them is us within Alberta Agriculture. We are here to answer those questions and to find some answers for you and point you in the right direction. If you're just not sure about certain things, we're here to help with that pathfinding and make your life easy for you, and to create resources for you, or whatever it takes to help you work through the challenges of being a market manager, because you can't know everything, and you are thrown a lot of different curveballs as you manage the market. The regulatory agencies are also there to support you. One of their primary roles is education, and they would far rather educate you as a market manager so that you can do your job better, as opposed to being punitive in any way. That's the last thing they want. Laying fines and issuing warnings is a last resort for them. They are there to educate you and to help you. Your board of directors, your advisory committee is there to help you as well. Like, yes, they set the rules, they set the policies, but they're there to back you up as you enforce those policies and those rules on the vendors and within the market space. So that is somebody that you should always feel that you can go to and speak very candidly and freely with. And the Alberta Farmers Market Association is there to help you. They are separate from what I do within the government. My role within the government is to manage the approved farmers market program. So I approve markets, and you send the paperwork in to me. The association, on the other hand, it has a very different role and is entirely separate, even though a lot of people still associate both of us with being one and the same. We're not, and I will go into that in a little more detail. So your sponsor, for those markets that are sponsored by a not-for-profit community group, and that's how they achieve their nonprofit status. So we're looking at markets who have a as an ag society as a sponsor, local community club like Elks, Lions, Legions, Kinsmen, Chambers of Commerce, municipalities. Those markets have an overseeing organization above them, and that organization is responsible and accountable for all the activities within that approved farmers market. And what they often do is delegate authority down to an advisory committee that is made up of vendors and a liaison from the board, but they are ultimately responsible and accountable for everything. They will help form that advisory committee to help deal with the day-to-day operations. Overall, they oversee what goes on in that market, help establish the rules and the processes. They assist in recruiting, selecting, compensating, and evaluating you, the market manager. They are there to encourage and financially support yearly market manager training if they are able to do so financially, to encourage vendor participation on market executive within that advisory committee, to get vendors involved and be a part of the decisions that are made at the market level. They are there to ensure that the program records that we need within the government are maintained and are submitted to us in a timely manner. to ensure that there is legislative and regulatory compliance. I mean, one of your main roles as the market manager is to ensure that there is regulatory compliance. Well, the sponsor is there to support you as you are doing that. And if they come across any problems in that respect, they are there to ensure that you know what's going on and that these things need to be rectified. And they're there to make sure the market is insured. In a lot of cases, the sponsoring organization actually insures the market that's under them, but not all the time. But at the end of the day, they're responsible for making sure that that market does have insurance. So a little bit of an explanation of the difference between the board of directors and the advisory committee, because this does seem to cause a lot of angst out there. The board of directors only exists within a legal entity. So if you have a sponsored market, it is the board of directors for that sponsor. Or, excuse me, if you have a nonprofit society set up specifically for the purpose of operating the market, then that has a legal board of directors. The board of directors is, as I stated before with the sponsor, accountable and responsible for all the market activities. That holds true within a nonprofit society market as well. And the board of directors can delegate responsibilities down to the advisory committee. The advisory committee, on the other hand, only exists in a sponsored market, and it is typically made up of vendors from the vending community. They should be looked at as a committee of the sponsoring organization. So the example I use a lot of times is that they are like a fair committee or a rodeo committee within an ag society. They are a committee that is reporting back up to that legal board of directors. And of course, they can be delegated responsibilities by the board of directors, but in their own right, do not have any legal authority, because that legal authority lies with the board of directors. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. A lot of times, the advisory committee is treated a lot like a board of directors, where you are having an annual meeting and you are voting executive onto it. So you're looking at like a president and a vice president and things like that, but they are not and should not be viewed as being the same level of accountability, level of authority that exists within the actual board of directors. And a lot of times, particularly in like an ag society, that their legislation requires that the legal board of directors has signing authority on the checks and on the bank accounts, where the committee that runs the market does not have that authority. So you just keeping those thoughts in mind as you go through. And if you have any questions about what you have for your particular market, please do get in touch with me. Okay, so what are the vendors responsible for? They need to, besides producing a safe and saleable product, they need to research all of the legislation that is applicable to their products, whether it is a food product or a cosmetic or whatever it may be. They need to make sure that they are complying with the legislation and producing a safe product. They need to complete the required training. So if they're a food vendor, then they need to take the food safety training, at the very least, that farmers market, food safety basics for farmers market training. And they need to adhere to the market rules. They're not there to disrupt things. They're there to follow the rules of the market. And every market has different rules. And maybe things may be treated a little bit differently. So it is irrelevant what happens at market A. When they are at market B, they need to follow those rules. That is their responsibility. Program staff. So that's referring to myself and to Dolores Serafin, who works with me. We are here to administer the guidelines, to consult with and advise the market boards of directors, the committees, sponsors, the managers, the vendors. We're here to provide you with confidential advice and help you through any of the challenges that you may have, regardless of what role you play with the market. We liaise with other government agencies. I work very, very closely with Alberta Health Services, Canadian Food Inspection Agency. So when we have questions or when problems arise, we know who to go to and work very closely with those folks, either one-on-one, or I will connect you as market managers in with those representatives. We have the mobile app and the online map of the market. So when you are completing annual paperwork, it is coming into me and into Dolores, and we put that information into the website so that everybody out there knows where the market is, when it is, how to contact you, that sort of thing. We provide resources for the markets, whether it is market manager training or the information you find on the website. Whenever I feel that there is a need, that there's a gap in things that you need to know, I'm here to create those resources for you and get them out to you to make your lives easier. I enforce the use of the Sunny Girl logo. Sunny Girl is a trademarked image. It belongs to the province of Alberta, to the government, and it is only available for use by government and by those approved farmers markets. So when that logo is being misused and being used inappropriately, my job is to step in and get that rectified so that it is only used the way it is supposed to be. And I work very closely with the Alberta Farmers Market Association. I do sit as an advisor on their board of directors with no voting rights, just as in an advisory capacity, so that they know what I'm doing and I know what they're doing, and we help each other out to make sure that markets can be more successful in the long run. The public health inspector, or your environmental public health officer, is there to enforce the Alberta Public Health Act and the food regulation, right? They are there to inspect markets and vendors for compliance and to really work with the market manager to ensure an understanding of the requirements under the food regulation. This past summer in 2022, they changed how they work with the markets and how they inspect markets. And I'll talk about that more in webinar 3 for module 3 on the regulatory piece, but they're really there to educate the market manager on what those expectations are and what a market manager should be looking for with the vendors and how to ensure that there is compliance with those food vendors. And the public health inspector is there to liaise with me. So we, as I said, I work very closely with AHS and we reach out to each other very frequently. The Alberta Farmers Market Association, as I said, they are separate from me. I am not AFMA and they are not me. We have very, very different roles. I manage the farmers market program on behalf of the minister, and they are a membership. AFMA is a membership-driven nonprofit organization that is external. Their primary role is advocacy. They are there to be your voice, to represent you when speaking to government, to represent you if there are any sort of legislative changes or any challenges that are happening within the industry. They are there to speak on your behalf. And they can only do that if they have all of you, many of you, both markets and vendors as underneath their umbrella, paying that membership fee in order to represent you. The more members they can represent, the stronger their voice is with government. They're there to provide you with education. They do have a website, they have social media accounts, they have an annual conference. They provide you with as much information as they can to help educate you. They offer market manager meetups several times a year, as well as vendor meetups to try to help you in that regard. When COVID hit and we were all scrambling to try to figure out what we could and couldn't do within the farmers markets, they held several market manager meetups just to talk this through so that you would be better equipped to go forward and be successful operating during those really challenging times. They're there to help promote markets, and they do so by having member markets listed on their website, having vendors listed on their website. Very important and very critical piece. The vendor listing that they have on their website is the only external facing vendor listing that is available, and where customers can find vendors, where markets can search for vendors they may be lacking and that kind of thing. So very important. They're there to encourage innovation, and they do that through education and the events that they hold to really encourage people to do things differently and to be very successful and at the front of the pack when they are creating their products and selling their products. They often are known for their group insurance policy, which is available for both markets and vendors. They also have a vendor verification program that is just being rolled out where vendors can choose to be a part of the program and have their products verified so that you're not questioned by customers. Did you make this or not? Yes. If you've been verified, those products are yours, and you can, you've gone through a process that has proven that the products you're selling are yours and that you are being truthful. So a very important program for them. Their website, albertafarmersmarket.com. So a couple of documents, discussions that I have had with the Farmers Market Association and things that they have created tools for you. One of them being conflict resolution. And if you've been a market manager for any amount of time, you know that one of the main challenges that you have is dealing with conflict in the marketplace. And it can often get really tricky. And if you're a conflict avoider, like many people in the world, this can often be really difficult for you. Things that to think about as you are developing market rules is that your rules need to be firm but fair. As long as you are consistently applying the rules, vendors can accept that and be supportive of the rules. As long as there isn't any sort of wishy-washy and this person gets favoritism, it is much easier for people to be accepting of challenging rules. A couple of in Appendix 5, there are some resources for you on how to deal with conflict and resolve conflicts. And a couple of samples that the Farmers Market Association has created is a failure to comply policy and a cancellation policy. And that information is available within the manual itself. And just some ideas and things to include within your market rules and to make sure that you are being consistent with respect to, if you've got vendors who are failing to comply with the rules, how do you deal with that? Most markets have a 3-strike policy in place. So what happens, what is it? Is it a verbal warning, written warning, third warning, you're expelled, or whatever that may be? So they've provided a sample for you to consider adopting or, adjusting for your own market needs. They've also developed a policy around cancellation. We know that things come up with vendors, but we need to have a policy around cancellations and last-minute cancellations, because the last thing you want to see in your market are empty spaces because you as a market manager didn't know that vendors weren't going to come. They've also there's also the challenges when you look around, look at complaints that are out there and that come in. You as a market manager can receive complaints from the vendors, from the customers, and dealing with them should always be in writing is a recommendation. It is very difficult for you to resolve a complaint and to really truly understand a complaint unless somebody is able to articulate it and put it down in writing. A lot of markets don't consider it to be a valid complaint. So that is a recommendation that the association has certainly put forward, and I agree is a best practice for sure to be considering. A little bit on market rules. As you are developing your market rules and as you're revising them, going through, these are just some areas to consider, topics to consider, putting information on under. You can be as simple or as complex as you want to. The larger markets tend to have more complex rules out there, which is great. Only make as many rules as you need to and that you can consistently apply. If you have rules that you can't enforce, then maybe they shouldn't be a rule. Or if you have rules that you don't want to enforce because they're unreasonable, maybe they shouldn't be a rule. So logistics, when I say logistics, I'm talking about when and where is the market operating. So put that into your market rules. We are a Saturday, rain or shine market that operates from 10 to 2. whatever your logistics may be, and we operate out of this hall or on this street. So put that into your market rules so that everybody is clear when and where you operate. Your setup time. When are vendors allowed to come and start setting up? And this is important because you as a market manager also have a life, and it is unfair to you to say that you need to be at the market site 6 hours before the market starts because you have one vendor who likes to show up early. Set it a reasonable amount of time that the market is available for vendors to set up, and stick to that, because that is it can become very challenging for you as a market manager. And also think about how long do they have to tear down at the end of the day, right? So that, again, you're not stuck in that market space. So that should certainly be within the market rules. Vendor parking. A lot of markets have rules around where the vendors can and cannot park. A lot of them say you can unload at this entrance to the facility, and then you need to move your vehicle to this part of the parking lot or wherever it may be, because customers need to have first access to the closer parking. So put that into your market rules. What is the expectation around unloading and parking their vehicles? Special markets. Are you offering special markets? We have special markets everywhere from Valentine's Day to Easter to Mother's Day to Father's Day to Christmas, whatever, and everywhere in between. So are you having special markets, and are there different expectations around that? Are there different rules around that? Do you have to have vended at regular markets, so many regular markets, before you will be considered for a special market? Are the fees different? Are the hours different? Are the locations different? So if you can, put that into your market rules so that everybody knows up front how those are managed. And if there's a different way to apply to be a vendor at a special market, put that in the market rules so that everybody understands. What are your stall fees? Are you charging by the market? Do you have a monthly rate? Do you have a seasonal rate? If you're doing these more larger consolidated rate, like a seasonal rate, often there is a discount attached to that, but not always. That's a decision that needs to be made at the market level. What are the expectations of when those fees are paid? Do you have to pay before the season starts? Do you have to pay before you set up? When do you have to pay? How do you pay? Do you pay in cash? Do you pay in check? Do you pay with an e-transfer? Put that into the market rules so everybody understands how that is dealt with. Your stall. Put in the market rules how big your stall size is. I mean, if it's outside, typical stall size is the tent size, the canopy size, which is 10 by 10, but that may not be true of within the market itself. So put that into the market rules of what is the stall size. I've run across markets that often are challenged when they are in an indoor setting with vendors putting up racks or additional kind of small tables to the side of their normal 6 or 8 foot table. So how are you going to deal with that at the market level? Is that allowed? Are there restrictions with respect to height of extra displays or where those displays can be placed? Are there additional fees if you want to set those things up, or if you're putting things on the end of your table to sort of expand your space? So think about that at the market level and how you want to deal with it, because it can get out of hand. Do you want clear sight lines throughout the market, or will you allow the racks, whatever it may be? So think about that stall and the stall size. Vendor behavior policy. This is where your 3-strike rule comes into play. What are the expectations placed on the vendors, and what are they allowed to do and not to do? And are there some infractions that are deal breakers? If you have a 3-strike policy that is the first infraction is a warning, second is a written warning, and the third is expulsion. Are there some infractions that are absolute deal breakers and you can be expelled immediately? Are there fines attached to not behaving appropriately? think this through of all the different possibilities and put that into your vendor rules so everybody is aware. Vendor and product signage. Do you have a requirement within your market with respect to vendors and product signs? So the vendor name, does that have to be on signage? Does every item on the table require signage along with pricing and things like that? So how do you want your market to look? It's really an image thing that you need to decide of how do you want your market to look as customers come in and feel welcomed. Um, a lot of people have concerns, have problems coming into a market where things aren't labeled with respect to price, or you don't know what an item is. And I know that this is to encourage conversation between the vendor and the customer, but it can also be off-putting for some customers because they don't feel comfortable going up and asking. They just want to maybe just browse and just look without that interaction. So what is your policy around this sort of signage? Market membership. So some markets do have a membership policy where you need to pay a fee, either maybe once or like a lifetime fee or maybe annually. Some require their vendors to be members of the Ag Society. If the Ag Society is a um, membership-driven organization, so are you required as vendors to be members of that? State that in the market rules. And how does that affect voting rights within the market? Do you need to be a market member in order to vote at meetings? How often are you holding vendor meetings? Is it once per year? Is it, pre-season, mid-season, end of season? Put that into the market rules so that people know and can plan for these sorts of things. What is your vendor and product mix policy? Some markets are very wide open, like we'll take any vendors that come along, and others are very clear that we only need so many vegetable producers. We only need so many bakers making bread or what have you. And this is to ensure that sales can happen, but so that there is also healthy competition within the market, because customers do want to have that ability to choose. So what is your policy on that? And who has final decision-making authority? Is it the market manager, or is there a vendor committee that actually reviews all of the vendor applications? And please do have a vendor application. There is a sample application online on our sunnygirl.ca website. Please make sure that you do have something like that, because I often hear complaints that vendors will just suddenly start putting additional products on their table. And what do I do about that? Well, if you have a policy that states only those products that have been approved on the application can be put on the table, you need additional approval for new products, then you've got something to fall back on. And if you've got it in writing of what products they said they were going to bring, then you can work forward from there. What is your policy for space allocation? How much space can a vendor have, and where are they placed within the market? Whose decision is it to place people? Is there a sort of a guarantee that if you're a full-time vendor, you get sort of first dibs on where you're placed in the market? It's very important to lay that out, because what you as a manager want is to force the traffic to go through the market so that all vendors get equal access to customers. And you don't want your big, say, produce vendor right at the door. While it may be easier for them to load and unload, for customers, they may just duck in and duck out and not shop everyone else. So where do you place people, and what is your policy around that, and who's the final decision maker on it? Vendor insurance. Does the market require vendors to be insured in order to sell? As I've stated in webinar 1, and as is very clear in the manual, the policy that covers the market covers the market. It does not cover the vendors. So are you going to require your vendors to be insured? And some market insurance requires that vendors are insured, or they won't insure the market. So that's something to think about as well. More and more markets are requiring our vendors to be insured. And put in a rule around legislative compliance, and can be as simple as stating that you are expected to be in compliance, to know what legislation impacts you as a vendor, and to be in compliance. And then you can move into the vendor behavior policy if there is non-compliance. So these are just some points to think about as you create your market rules. So please think things through, talk it through, and if you're not sure about some things, give me a call. We'll talk it through. So this comes to the end of this webinar. Again, I'm Eileen. Dolores is also available at any time to help you out. Give us a call, send us an email, whatever works for you. Go. Sometimes the computer does funny things. So this is the end. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this webinar and to complete your market manager training. Take care.